bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, as I've often said. And that saying is especially true concerning deadlines. A newspaper editor uses what he has in hand. A promised article is no good to an editor if the deadline is upon him. If you are late, you get left out. If you are dealing with a daily paper, turning an article in 3 days after the event virtually ensures that the article will be ignored. You may often be able to write much of the article ahead of time so that you can be sure to get it to the paper as soon as possible. And there's no time to send photos off for development either. Look for a local facility used by professional photographers which can develop them quickly. Or the paper may be willing to develop your film for you in order to get the pictures in a timely fashion. We'll talk more about photography in Lesson 6. So far, we've concentrated on newspapers, but most people get their news from television in your day. What we've said about writing can be applied to radio and television as well, but there are some fundamental differences. If a newspaper wants to increase the amount of news it carries, it simply adds pages, assuming it can get advertisers to pay for them, of course. Mustn't be penny wise and pound foolish. But a radio or television station cannot expand beyond the 24 hours God gave each day. They're pretty much stuck with that. Some local TV news programs have expanded to an hour, or even an hour and a half in the evening. But many of them are using satellite technology to cover a state and even national and international news on location. So local news is still limited. Aha! We have a visitor. Oh, hello. Welcome, Mrs. Wood. I'd like to introduce Brenda Wood. I've invited her to come and give us a little insight into her work as a television news anchor. Please, sit down.
Thank you.
You're just in time to talk to us about television news. Well, Brenda, tell us a little about your background and where you're currently working.
I'm currently working at WAGA Television, which is the CBS affiliate in Atlanta. I am the primetime anchor for the 5, 6, and 11 o'clock newscasts every day of the week, with the exception of Friday night. And I'm also a news reporter, so I actually go out into the field and bring back stories, as do our other full-time reporters. I've been in the business for more than 12 years.
Wonderful. Well, we've been discussing the basic principles of news writing, especially as it relates to the print media. But could you tell us a little bit about what you, as a television news reporter and anchor, look for in a good news story?
I look for a number of things. First and foremost, I look for stories that are of interest to a large group of people. We are a mass medium, and that means we communicate to the masses. So we're looking for things that are of interest to the masses. Some things that can count as interesting are things that will affect their lives on a day-to-day basis, things that people will be able to glean information from and to be able to make decisions with accordance to their lives. Also things that are compelling make a story interesting and make for a good news story. Compelling, by that I mean things that are perhaps romantic, things that are sensitive, heartwarming, sometimes gut-wrenching, sometimes painful. But all of these things add a perspective and a dimension to the story that broadens it and makes it much more interesting to our viewers. And these things are what I look for in a good news story.
And if a church communication leader has an event that they might believe is worthy of television news coverage, what would they do?
Well, first they need to send a news release. And it sounds like that might be complicated and long and involved, but it doesn't have to be. The shorter that news release, the better. You need to put on that typewritten sheet of paper what the event is, where it's going to take place, what time, why you're doing it, and why it's important. And this is a key element. That does not have to be long, maybe a couple of sentences, a paragraph at the most, of why this is a significant event. Maybe it's unique, it's never been done before, it's going to affect a blighted area. something that makes this stand out from all of the other news releases that our news department get. And send that news release maybe a week, 2 weeks in advance of the event, no more than that. Send it to the assignment editor and or a producer of a particular show if you have a particular show in mind that you'd like to get it on. But the assignment editor is general enough. After you send that news release to that person, maybe the day before the scheduled event, you might want to follow it up with a phone call, just to make sure that it's in the right hands, and also to find out if there are any questions concerning the event and if there is any way that they can facilitate, that your organization can facilitate the news department in pulling off the coverage of the story. If you get vague answers, don't let that concern you. You may have called at a time that's distracting. You also may have called when, at a time when the news director or the assignment editor has not made a decision about that story yet. And so they can't tell you in advance whether or not there will be coverage. So go ahead and make the phone call, and if you get good answers, fine. If you don't get what you're looking for, that's okay too. And if on the day of your event the news organization does not show up, yes, I understand the disappointment, but don't let that keep you from sending another news release on some other program or event. They may come the next time around.
Let's suppose that one of our church members has a videotape that they've done of an event. Would your station use that tape?
If it is compelling enough, absolutely. We have used in the past home videos that we transfer to our professional system and put on the air. If it's something that is extremely compelling, extremely unique, it has to have those two factors before we can put it on the air.
Now, is it true that a story might have a better chance of appearing on a newscast on some days rather than others?
Absolutely. There are slow news days. Weekends typically are slow news days, Saturday and Sunday. If you have an event, you might want to plan it on one of those 2 days. During the holidays also is a good time to plan something because those are typically slow news days. And sometimes in the summer when people are going on vacation, the movers and shakers in the communities have gone on vacation and there's not a whole lot happening, you might want to plan something in the summer too.
Well, I'd like to thank you so much, Mrs. Wood, for taking time from your busy schedule to tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, thank you. It's been a delight.
And I know you have to rush back to the station because, well, it's getting close to news time, isn't it?
It is. I've got to get busy. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Well, I hope this lesson on news writing, the communicator's basic tool, has been informative and useful. Remember, the news media can be useful to you in your task as a church communicator, but you must be aware of the news outlet's needs so you can take them something they can use. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, I always say. And if your story qualifies as news, if it is written in the correct structure, if you have established a relationship with the editor, and if you are on time, you will have a much better chance of getting your story printed. So get acquainted with your local news media and learn how to use them effectively. Don't be disappointed if they don't use most of what you submit. The important thing is to be consistent. Remember, they have to fill their space every day. Occasionally, they will use what you send. And what's more important is that the public sees the name of your church regularly enough that they begin to recognize it. And now, if you don't mind, I think I'll see what my newspaper says about Paris. And so I'll bid you au revoir until next time, when we'll talk about writing for church publications.